Commander Aurora Vance had finally stepped off the plane, her tour of duty behind her, and traded her combat boots for running shoes. As the sun dipped low over Willowbrook Estates, she set out on her evening jog, relishing the cool breeze rustling through the oak and magnolia trees. The manicured lawns and quiet streets felt worlds away from the dusty checkpoints of the Middle East. Each measured breath reminded her of home, a place she had missed more than she could say. Her mind wandered to friends she would see again, to Sunday dinners at her parents' house, and to the peaceful routine she had longed for while overseas. She rounded a gentle curve on Maplewood Lane when a sudden roar shattered the calm. The screech of tires turned her head. A patrol car barreled alongside her, lights strobing in the gathering dusk. Heart racing, she slowed to a halt. Two uniformed officers stepped onto the pavement. Both were white, their hands hovering over holstered sidearms as though expecting trouble. One of them, taller than the other, called out sharply, "Hold it right there, this isn't your area." His tone carried a harsh edge she had seldom heard on American soil. Maintaining her composure, Aurora slowed her breathing and raised a hand in greeting. "I live here," she said evenly, her voice steady from years of addressing troops under far more dangerous circumstances. "I just returned from a year-long deployment. My home is 3 blocks down." She offered to provide any verification they needed. Instead of listening, the taller officer sneered ID now. She explained that she had set out without her wallets, a choice many joggers made for convenience. The implication was unmistakable. She didn't belong here. As the first crack in her post-deployment calm appeared, Aurora realized this would be no ordinary traffic stop. The neighborhood she owned and cherished had become the stage for a confrontation she never expected, one that threatened to challenge everything she believed about home and justice. Commander Vance's calm assertion that she lived just 3 doors down and was fresh from overseas service only seemed to deepen the officer's hostility. Officer Dorian Frost, his mirrored aviators, reflecting the waning sunset, paced around her in short, deliberate steps. "ID," now he barked, voice flat and unyielding. Aurora met his gaze and recited her name, rank, and home address, her tone steady and authoritative. She spoke of her military deployment and the years she'd spent honoring her oath credentials that once commanded instant respect. But Officer Nolan Briggs stepped forward, voice laced with contempt. "Funny how we always hear that from people who don't belong here," he sneered, letting the insult hang in the humid air. The casual racism hit harder than any enemy's taunt, stripping away the security she'd felt on her own streets. Instinctively, she straightened, posture erect, the practiced stance of a commander used to giving orders rather than receiving them. She reminded them firmly but without raising her voice that she was a resident with full legal rights. Their reply was swift and brutal. Without warning, Frost's open hand struck her cheek, the crack of flesh against flesh echoing like a gunshot in the quiet neighborhood. Shock and pain flared, but Aurora refused to cry out. Before she could regain her footing, both officers grabbed her arms and forced her face first onto the rough asphalt. The pavement scraped her skin, leaving a sting sharper than any shrapnel could. Humiliation mingled with disbelief as she lay pinned, the distant hum of air conditioners and the occasional car passing by, standing in stark contrast to the injustice unfolding on that pavement. In that moment, she realized this was no mere misunderstanding. It was a brutal reminder that even her uniform could not insulate her from prejudice. And as she felt the ground bite into her cheek, she knew her fight for justice had only just begun. Commander Vance lay face down on the cool asphalt, the weight of Officer Briggs' knee pressing into her spine with every shallow breath. She could feel the officer's heavy boot heel resting against her uniform's polished finish and the cold bite of handcuffs snapping around her wrists. The metal bit into her warm skin, but training and resolve kept her from crying out. Pain bloomed like a dark flower across her body, yet she remained silent, each suppressed moan a testament to years of discipline. Just as the evening shadows thickened and her vision threatened to dim, a firm voice cut through the tension. "Officers, what are you doing? I'm recording this, Doctor." Julian Vega stepped briskly into the pool of lamplight, smartphone held high. The red recording light shone like a beacon of accountability. Both officers froze. Frost, who only moments ago had worn an air of unquestioned authority, took an involuntary step back. He straightened his posture, smoothing his uniform, and tried to reclaim control with a practiced nod. Briggs released his hold, but not before issuing a parting barb. "Stay in your place," he muttered under his breath. Then, as quickly as they had descended on her, both officers returned to their cruiser. Blue and red lights spun in the gathering dusk, tires crunching over gravel as they pulled away, leaving Commander Vance bruised but unbroken. Slowly, she allowed herself to rise, each movement deliberate. Her cheeks stung where it had met the pavement, and her wrists throbbed from the tight cuffs, but her dignity remained unshaken. Around her, neighbors peered from windows and driveways drawn by the commotion. Dr. Vega knelt beside her, offering a steady hand. Without a word, Aurora accepted his help, her posture straight, her eyes clear. Though the night had tested her in ways no battlefield ever could, she stood resolute. The injustice was recorded, the witness eyes unblinking, and the fight for true justice had only just begun. Safely back in her home, Commander Vance paused at the door, her uniform hanging neatly in the closet ribbons and medals still polished, a stark reminder of battles fought abroad. She let out a slow breath before dialing Zoe Delgado, her longtime friend and a formidable civil rights attorney. As Aurora described each jolting moment, the slap that rang like a gunshot, the asphalt scraping her cheek, the humiliation of being pinned like a common criminal. Zoe's voice grew sharper with every detail. "You need to file right away," Zoe insisted. "This is more than an assault, it's a clear civil rights violation and an abuse of authority." Aurora felt the weight of disbelief settle over her. How could such brutality occur in her own neighborhood on American soil? Yet she knew Zoe was right. This wasn't something to endure in silence. But rather than rush to the courthouse, Aurora tapped into the discipline that had carried her through deployments. She spent late hours poring over city records and departmental logs, discovering a disturbing pattern. Minority residents in affluent neighborhoods repeatedly stopped, harassed, and then dismissed when they dared to complain. Reports vanished, investigations stalled, and officers faced no consequences. Armed with this troubling data, personal testimony from Dr. Vega's recording, and her own unwavering resolve, Aurora sketched out a plan. She wouldn't file a simple, hasty grievance. She would launch a methodical campaign for accountability. She would leverage Zoe's legal expertise, gather sworn statements from neighbors, and compile a dossier that left no room for doubt. As dawn approached, Aurora stood before her closet mirror once more. Her uniform glowed in the soft morning light, a symbol of authority and service. This time she would wear it not only for her country abroad, but for justice at home. Her battle had just begun, and this time there would be no silent retreat. Within a few days, Commander Vance transformed her solitary outrage into collective action. Around her kitchen table sat a remarkable coalition: Felicia Rowan, the esteemed neurosurgeon who'd been stopped in her hospital scrubs; Bernard Winslow, the retired judge whose own teenage son was needlessly handcuffed; Dr. Julian Vega, whose clear-eyed recording had exposed the assault; and Zoe Delgado, the tenacious civil rights attorney, ready to build their legal case. Their strategy sessions stretched late into the evening. Spread before them were organizational charts of the Houston Police Department, internal emails outlining community-specific enforcement targets, spreadsheets showing citation quotas, and records of officer bonus structures tied to fine revenue. At the top of their list were Captain Malcolm Reed and Chief Everett Shaw, figures whose tacit approval had allowed discriminatory stops to flourish unchecked. As frustration gave way to resolve, the group recognized that this was more than a single terrible encounter. It was a system engineered to prey on minority residents in affluent neighborhoods, turning law enforcement into a profit center. They wouldn't rely solely on a single lawsuit or newspaper article. They planned a four-pronged approach: legal action to challenge civil rights abuses, a coordinated media campaign to bring public scrutiny, a political push to engage state lawmakers, and outreach within the department to encourage officers appalled by these tactics to speak out. Each member of the coalition took responsibility. Felicia would leverage her hospital's outreach channels. Bernard would mobilize legal and civic networks. Dr. Vega would arrange community forums, and Zoe would draft comprehensive affidavits and civil rights complaints. Commander Vance herself prepared to testify before city and state bodies, her decorated uniform serving as both shield and symbol. Together, they were no longer isolated voices crying injustice into the void. Their unity lent strength to each individual story and created a force large enough to demand accountability. In that moment, together at her kitchen table, they resolved to shine light into every dark corner of the system, certain that only collective pressure could uproot such deeply entrenched corruption. The coalition's efforts caught fire when veteran investigative journalist Aisha Jackson called. Aisha had spent months following subtle leads, unexplained citation spikes, muffled complaints, and whispers of revenue targets, all pointing back to the same precinct. When Commander Vance shared her data, Aisha saw the story's true power, a seamless weave of hard numbers, first-hand accounts, and internal memos that laid bare a policing for profit scheme. On publication day, the Houston Chronicle ran a front-page expose under a bold headline, Policing for Profit, How HPD's Quotas Target Minority Homeowners. The piece combined crystal-clear graphs showing a disproportionate citation rate in minority neighborhoods, emotional quotes from neurosurgeons handcuffed on their way to surgery, and shocking emails directing officers to maximize ticket revenue. Within hours, social media exploded under the hashtag Justice for All. Cable news vans lined the Chronicle's steps, cameras rolling, as Aisha summarized the scandal. When enforcement becomes a business model, justice becomes the cost. Public outrage swelled. Viewers shared their own stories of arbitrary stops and fines flooding comment sections with similar patterns from around the city. Under mounting pressure, the Houston Police Department convened an emergency press conference. Chief Everett Shaw offered measured apologies and vague promises of reviewing policies, but his words rang hollow against the dossier's weight. The community demanded action, not platitudes. In just 2 days, Texas state legislators announced a bipartisan inquiry, and the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division opened its own investigation. The narrative had shifted decisively. This was not an isolated inconvenience for a decorated officer, but a full-blown institutional crisis. What began as a single jog in Willowbrook Estates had ignited a blaze of accountability, demonstrating that when data journalism and courageous citizens unite, systemic change becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Retaliation arrived like a cold gust. In the dead of night, someone spray-painted slurs on Aurora's driveway and smashed a window at her parents' beloved bakery. Her phone rang with anonymous threats. Dr. Vega found his medical license under frivolous review, tied to phantom billing complaints. These attacks had aimed to sow fear and fracture the coalition. Instead, they forged stronger bonds. Officer Helena Cruz, who had once trembled at her kitchen table, stepped forward at a packed press briefing. She laid out the department's own spreadsheets detailing monthly citation quotas, broken down by race and neighborhood. Faces in the audience went pale as she spoke of performance bonuses tied directly to ticket revenue. Then came Officer Nolan Briggs's turn. In a courtroom deposition, he recounted the unspoken rules he'd once followed. If you see a black face in Willowbrook Estates, you stop them. No questions asked. His admission of blind compliance sent ripples through the legal community and emboldened others to question orders. Even the local Police Veterans Association broke its silence. Dozens of retired officers publicly condemned the treatment of Commander Vance, calling it an embarrassment to the badge they had once sworn to protect. Their white-haired leaders met with state legislators urging swift reform and praising Aurora's courage. What began as isolated acts of intimidation had unwittingly rallied a chorus of voices from frontline officers to military veterans against systemic abuse. The precinct's wall of denial crumbled under combined weight of insider testimony, community outrage, and now veteran indignation. They proved a powerful truth: change doesn't depend solely on external mandates, but flourishes when conscience moves from within. With each act of retaliation, the alliance's resolve deepened. United, they transformed fear into fuel, showing that when those who once upheld the status quo speak out, they can become the architects of real justice. The pressure became irresistible. Within days, Chief Shaw was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, and Captain Reed found himself facing charges of evidence tampering after forensic accountants unearthed attempts to delete incriminating emails. The State Attorney General's office seized HPD's financial records, revealing millions of dollars funneled through targeted citation quotas in minority neighborhoods. Officer Frost was indicted on felony assault under color of authority for striking Commander Vance. Officer Briggs, who had courageously testified, received immunity and was reassigned to the new Community Relations Unit, his first-hand insights invaluable to rebuilding trust. Zoe Delgado accepted the role of Director of the Civil Rights Division in the District Attorney's Office, spearheading prosecutions of official misconduct. A civilian oversight committee endowed with genuine investigatory and disciplinary power replaced the toothless review boards of the past. Across Texas, law enforcement agencies monitored Houston's experience, closely recognizing its reforms as a potential template, eliminating revenue-based enforcement metrics, instituting transparent data audits, and embedding community-elected members on oversight panels. What began as Commander Vance's personal stand against humiliation had rippled into a statewide reckoning. The once hidden mechanics of discriminatory policing were now laid bare, and Houston's new model offered a powerful blueprint for nationwide change, proof that one person's resolve can light the way for systemic reform. Half a year later, Aurora stood in the Houston Police Academy's grand auditorium, now wearing the oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel. Before her sat a diverse class of new officers eager to don their badges. Gone were the archaic citation quotas. Each recruit would now be evaluated on de-escalation skills, community engagement, and unwavering fidelity to constitutional rights. At her side, Officer Helena Cruz, officially the department's first integrity officer, reviewed enforcement data in real time, ensuring patrol patterns reflected equity, not revenue. Felicia Rowan and Bernard Winslow, once civilians in courtroom seats, now chaired the strengthened civilian oversight panel, their lived experiences guiding policy. Even Nolan Briggs, who had testified against his former colleagues, joined the faculty, teaching ethics in action with humility born of his own transformation. The new statewide law outlawed any policing model tied to ticket revenue, mandating transparent audits and community representation on every oversight board. What began as one decorated officer's fight against injustice had blossomed into a blueprint for reform, proving that lasting change demands both personal bravery and unified resolve across every rank. Today, Houston's overhaul still reverberates across the nation. Commander Vance has taken her fight to Capitol Hill, testifying before Congress to enshrine federal standards for police accountability and eliminate profit-driven enforcement. Cities from Seattle to Atlanta have adopted Houston's model, banning citation quotas, mandating real-time data reviews, and empowering truly independent civilian oversight boards. Even her parents' little bakery on Oak Ridge Lane has become a welcoming gathering spot where neighbors discuss community safety over fresh pastries. Their resilience is a testament to transformation born from hardship. Yet the road ahead remains long. Entrenched attitudes and bureaucratic inertia persist in pockets of every department. But the bedrock for genuine equality under the law is now in place, reinforced by transparent policies, rigorous training and constitutional policing, and alliances between law enforcement advocates and everyday citizens. What began as a single act of discrimination against a four-star officer evolved into a strategic crusade fueled by meticulous data gathering, legal acumen, courageous whistleblowers, and unshakable resolve. Commander Vance's journey proves that one determined individual, backed by a coalition of diverse voices and a clear plan, can ignite a movement powerful enough to reshape institutions. From this story, we learn that lasting change only comes when citizens, the press, lawyers, and government work together. The key message is racism isn't just an individual issue, but a systemic one, and only by understanding its roots, from policy incentives to financial motivations, can it truly be healed. Now, I'd like to hear your personal perspective. Do you believe that the use of data and transparency is powerful enough to eradicate bias? Share your own viewpoint on this narrative. And when do you predict racism will finally end? 2050, 2100, or perhaps never? Engaging in conversation, asking tough questions, and challenging the status quo are the first steps toward defining the path forward. Comment below with your thoughts and stay tuned for the next chapters in this fight for justice for all. Disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional. All characters and events are creations of the author and are not intended to reference or criticize any real person. It is designed to raise awareness of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating one another with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose all forms of violence, prejudice, and injustice. Please consider this before viewing.